Chad. Chad is my coach from CrossFit. I started CrossFit probably about a couple years ago when I had a lot of problems with my back and even a hand from office work. And Chad kind of cured me. Pretty much going to exercising every day. I don't feel any pains today. So Chad is co-owner of Synergy Strength and also Boss Strength Institute here in town. So go ahead, Chad.
Perfect. All right, guys. First off, this is kind of cool. I've never been here before. This is really interesting. I probably can't waste too much time because I only got 20. But I would like to thank Alan for letting me come down and talk today. My talk is called strength versus aerobic function, which is probably not properly titled. So as we go through this, it'll make a little bit more sense. My main goal today is to discuss is the difference between, or at least discuss the myth or the fallacy of aerobic conditioning, where most people think of that as the holy grail of fitness. I'm going to make the argument that strength training is much more valuable than is aerobic training, okay? So first off, I would like just a quick audience participation. How many of you guys are physically active, meaning going to the gym on a regular basis? Okay, so of all those people that have their hands up, how many of you guys are doing aerobic training? Yeah, no, absolutely. So there's a difference between exercise and physical activity. So what I was discussing was exercise. For us, and we'll clarify a little bit later, physical activity is walking your dog, very, very low intensity things of that nature. We'll get to it. I only got 15 minutes, man. Okay? All right. Of all those hands, how many of you guys are actively doing aerobic training? Okay. And then strength training, how many of you guys are doing strength training? Okay. Perfect. Okay, so our kind of philosophy with regard to training, and this goes from our gym, Synergy Strength here in town, and also Boss Strength Institute. Quick kind of explanation of what Boss is. Boss is a collaboration of myself, Scotty Butcher from the University of Saskatchewan in College of Physiotherapy. We do a lot of research together. Actually, he primarily does the research. I just facilitate it. But we do research at our club, primarily for adults, high intensity interval training, and strength training in different populations. Some disease populations as well as just elderly populations. But our philosophy is this here. I'll give you a moment to read that. This is kind of our belief with regard to fitness and health. I also can probably warn you guys, I'm trying to talk very slow. Anyone in here that knows me knows I talk incredibly fast and I mumble. So if I miss something, you guys just throw your hand up and I'll repeat it. Okay, so our hypothesis. First off, like I mentioned earlier, aerobic fitness is not the holy grail of health or wellness, and that's primarily what I'm talking about here, not talking about sport or performance. I'm talking about health and wellness. Strength is a crucial aspect of the physical quality, that is life and sport and things of that nature. And then lastly, and this is straight out of kind of more of the CrossFit realm, is that we don't believe in strength training muscles. We believe in strength training movements and movement patterns, okay? And what that means is we don't go to the gym and do bicep curls and tricep extensions and isolated muscle bodybuilding or hypertrophy work, not discounting that as not valuable. What we do is we're from more of a sporting perspective with regard to the way we train for health and wellness, which is we believe in movement patterns through squatting, deadlifting, pressing, bench press, and different rowing patterns. Those are our big five, and that primarily makes up everything that we do. So we're training, like I said, a movement pattern, not a muscle group. So I'm going to jump in. I'm going to attack into limitations of aerobic training. Now, what I primarily have here is I have one major study. This little talk is a part of a full day seminar that we do with Boss. So I've kind of just pulled a whole bunch of little things out of it. But we're going to start off with one study that was done looking at different aerobic training limitations and mortality. So our key points that we're going to cover here. You'll notice the word HIIT and strength, that they are superior or if not equal to aerobic training for most physiological benefits that we're looking for. Does anyone here not know what HIIT is? Okay, so HIIT is high intensity interval training, and that's what we do a lot of research on. So imagine doing about 1 minute of maximal effort and work and then resting for 3, okay? And then you just do repeated bouts of that. So a good example would be sprint training, hill training, a lot of aerobic athletes do. That would be considered HIIT training. And then strength training, of course, for us is in the gym, moving the weights around. My thing died. Oh, there it is. And then next, we already talked about that, but the neat part is that strength training and anaerobic training are just as beneficial as aerobic training with regard to improving aerobic fitness for new trainees, and that's actually really, really important. So when we start at the gym, most people think of going to the gym and starting off with running, getting into lower intensity activities. Our argument is the exact opposite. Go get involved in strength training, learn how to strength train properly, and you're going to receive the exact same benefits aerobically as aerobic training can give you. Another limitation to aerobic training would just be the simple fact: in order to continue to get performance or improvements in your work capacity, the volume has to get very, very high. Okay, and I'm going to go into some slides a little later as to explaining that. Also, most people don't think of this way when they hear. How many of you guys have heard of CrossFit? Can you throw your hands up real quick? Okay, so that's excellent. What is the highest injury sport out there is actually running, and most people don't believe that. The highest injury sport out there of all, other than maybe grade 9, 10 girls basketball and volleyball, is actually running. Okay, so musculoskeletal injuries, cardiovascular risk, things of that. Highest risk of injury is in running. So that's not the fallacies that most people don't understand, is that aerobic conditioning. What I mean by aerobic conditioning, again, maybe I should have clarified first, is what I'm talking about is steady state running, steady state rowing, anything long durations and monostructural in nature. Is very, very high, yeah. I think the number in the study was done in 1 year of training. 70% of individuals will have some sort of injury.
North America or all around the world?
I don't know what the study was done in. Most likely North America. What's that? Yeah, I can't speak to the exact study where the population came from. I would imagine it'd be North America though. Okay, so like I said, this comes from a study with 58,000 people partaking in it, and this is the hazard ratio of all-cause mortality by running. So this graph right here, is there a pointer on here? There it is, right there. That one right there is the non-runner, and this is the runner. So again, I have to clarify with regard to my talk, I'm not saying running's bad. I'm not saying aerobic conditioning is bad. It actually states that you have a 19% better chance of not dying of a heart attack or any issues if you are running. So just in case, I should have clarified that earlier. There's nothing wrong with running. There's nothing wrong with aerobic conditioning. We're just going to talk about some of the limitations of it and then how that pertains to strength training. So if you're a runner, you're better off, okay? And that's the same conversation I had with someone over there, is that doing something is better than nothing. And that's kind of where this comes in. And later on, we're going to get into the fact that something should be the most bang for your buck versus something that's going to take a long period of time for the activity or for the person to do. So the next one is then the same study, hazard ratio of all-cause mortality with running distances. So this goes into looking at, again, 0 here being the reference of the non-runner, the non-runner, and then looking at the distance at which they ran in miles per week and what the cause of mortality was. So here you can see it running more than 25 miles per week. What did I do? 5% decrease. So the kind of sweet spot here is right in here, that 10 to about 20 miles per week. Now, for most people, they look at that and they go, well, that's actually quite a bit. I wouldn't normally run that. In most endurance circles with regard to marathon, half marathon, that's a light training week for most people. Okay, so that's kind of the sweet spot for decreasing all-cause mortality. And that's, again, for volume or miles. The next one goes into running frequency. So then we look at how often you're running per week. So 0 through 7. Peak twice a week, and then you can kind of see from almost 1 all the way to 5 is exactly the same, slight increase. But as you start getting into those longer durations, you start getting into the higher frequency, the all-cause mortality starts decreasing, okay, or increasing, I guess. Okay, so sweet spot's right in that 2 to 3. And then running speed comes into play. So now you start looking at how fast they're actually running while they're doing these training bouts. And again, you look at the sweet spot, anywhere between 7 miles down to around 6. That's the peak in what they were looking at here. But as you start getting over 8 miles per hour in your running speeds, you're losing some of the health benefits of what you're doing. And again, for the most part, if you think about this is primarily going to be the sport aerobic activity people. Okay, like I said, the half and full marathon people, things of that nature. Okay, so. And again, this is kind of just a brief review of what we just talked about, but this fact the study had 52 2002, 1,000 people involved in it, non-runners and runners, and they found that runners had a 19% lower adjusted mortality, and that was that very first slide I put up. But what they really found was that if you want to get health benefits, you should be running less than 20 miles per week, less than 6 times per week, and less than 8 miles per hour while you're doing these activities. Okay. Again, then looking at this, I believe this was a different study, but they're looking at basically the risk. Of looking at where ideal exercise is and what the amount of it is, and this is very much a sliding scale as to what exactly. I think it's constantly moving with the more research that we get in and the more information that we get in, but there's kind of a inverse curve here as to where the ideal amount of exercise is for performance, and then also with regard to risk of cardiovascular events, which is this one here was. So like I said, it's kind of moving around a little bit. Is that me?
No, it's the HDMI.
Oh, okay, sorry. So again, at the end of the day, the kind of main point here is that less volume actually equals less risk with regard to aerobic training, right? So, and that doesn't mean the less you do, the better, just not that extreme end of the aerobic conditioning. Then it goes into kind of where this slide's going to come up a little bit later about what is fitness or how fit is fit, okay? And realistically for the mortality rates, this is kind of where we want to sit. And this is a scale of METs, so a metabolic equivalent task. It's just something that's used in research, and then relative risk of mortality. So it's right around there, 10 to 12. That's considered the best spot to be sitting with regard to improving your health and wellness. Now that slide later, I think it comes up a little bit later, as to what that actually means in fitness, because that doesn't really mean a lot to anyone when they look at that number. It's like, what does that mean? Okay, we'll get into that a little bit later as to what that actually requires and what the prescription would be. Says what I just said. Then the relevance of strength training. So we're going to kind of leave the aerobic side for a second, go into strength training. Okay, this is kind of one of the main points here that we try and make in most of our talks when we're going is why heavy strengthening. A lot of people pull away from heavy strength training, and we believe it's actually one of the things you should be doing the most of. And the reason is, if you come in and just imagine an example that your absolute strength, you're picking up, what would something you guys be doing in life? Picking up I don't know, something you're working in the yard, you have to pick up something that's 80 pounds, but your best deadlift, so picking something off the floor, is 100. You're working at 80% of your max intensity. Does that make sense? So if you can pick up something that's 100 pounds and it's 80, you're working at 80%. If we can improve that up to 200, or I guess it'd be 160 in this case, that'd be 50%. You're doing less work to get things done, okay? So strength is in fact valuable. And if you look at this more so from the standpoint of mortality, longevity, independence, this is very, very important. So at our club, we work with multiple different groups. We work with juniors, and we also have a master's program. This is really a big point for us that we're trying to get across to them. If you look at injury rates, or the lessening the chance of falls and recovery rates, strength is a primary concern. So a lot of times we get into balance and aerobic function. It's not the predictor. It's strength. You need strength, okay, to fight off those things. And then here's why strength is important. Maybe not the best video to express, right, but it's kind of cute. Okay, all right, so you'll watch that a few times. I think you'll watch that 100 times. It never gets old. Okay. This is actually my business partner that put that in there. You guys might be more into this than I am, but is that the Lord of the Ring guys? Is that who that is? Yeah, okay, all right. I just didn't take it out, so I don't know who that is. Okay, so relevance of strength. With proper strength training, you have an increased health markers, or enhanced health markers, reduced mortality rate, improved cardiovascular fitness and health, improved functional performance, successful aging, and that's what I was talking about earlier with prevention of disease and independence. Injury prevention, rehabilitation. You're gonna rehab faster from most things if you have any kind of issues or surgeries you have to go through. Enhancements of movement mechanics as well, and that's a big one for longevity. So then when we go through this one's a little hard to see, but it's just a neat little slide where you look at aerobic exercise up here and resistance training and the benefits of all these different things that you're going to get. Obviously, the larger the more amount of arrows down or up is benefit. So you got total body fat loss, intra-abdominal fat, lean body mass, weight, body weight, all these different restrictions, all these different things. Most of these you're going to see improvements with strength training equal to aerobic exercise to some degree. And also here it just kind of notes that a lot of the ones that aren't, so total body fat, if you're trying to lose weight, aerobic training is a little bit better than resistance training. Kind of quick little asterisk that has to go with this though is that most of the research done on resistance training is not done through the type of resistance training that we're talking about. It's very much 3 sets of 10 bicep curls or 3 sets of 10 tricep extensions, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about whole body movements, much more metabolic movements. So I think these next few here would be altered. But point being is that most of the benefits you get from especially starting an exercise program are going to be the same with strength training as they are with aerobic training. Okay. This one study done with men. Most of the stuff was done with leg press and bench press as their tests. So they controlled age, alcohol, smoking, and aerobic fitness, and they found those under 50 and over 50. There was a 23 to 32% increase risk when you were weaker, and maybe not the best term, but when you were weaker versus stronger. Okay, and then the qualifications of what does weak mean, we start getting into, one more slide. This is actually from a COPD study looking at quadricep strength versus lung function, and they found that actually quadricep strength was a better indicator of health and longevity than was lung function. I'm gonna be quickly running out of time here, Alan, so I'll try and speed up. So in this study, they looked at fit and unfit individuals, and then also strength. So lower strength, middle strength, upper strength, and we'll qualify us later. And then unfit and fit. Neat things here is that if you had good cardiovascular fitness but low strength, you were at just as much risk as if you were having high levels of strength but were unfit. Okay. So again, strength being very, very important. And actually, that last one there. Compound effect of cardiovascular fitness on strength. So getting more cardiovascular fitness did nothing more for you. Okay, it just is a compounding effect with the strength training. Okay, so how fit is fit and how strong is strong. Now these numbers right here, each one of these things, these are all different studies that were done looking at what was requirements for when they looked at the mortality rates and disease rates for people. So this was low, high, moderate and high benefits. So when you go through this was bench press, BP, leg, and then leg strength. So what they were looking for in this study, so 1.1 kilograms per kilogram body weight would be your bench press. And I would argue that most people in here would not have that unless you are actually training your bench press. And leg press is probably a bad example. I would have loved to have seen that been a barbell squat or something more practical than a leg press. But in most of these, they're looking for almost double your body weight on a leg press for strength values to be considered beneficial. And then when you go how fit is fit, so what they're looking for is anywhere from the lowest was 34, but the average was up in here in this 40 to 42 milliliters per kilogram per minute, which is VO2 max score, which goes back to that original slide I had earlier, which is right here, the METs. This right here, 10 to 12 METs is equal to 35 to 42 VO2 from this one. So what does it take to have this kind of fitness? It doesn't take a lot. Okay, I'll skip this slide here. Usually with regard to achieving this level of a VO2 max, walking your dog 30 to 60 minutes twice a week would probably allow that for most people. So again, from a health and wellness perspective, you don't need a lot of aerobic training to get the health benefits out of it. Okay, but for strength training, if you go back to some of these slides, like I said, most people would not have these numbers, and these take longer time to get. So your time spent should be spent on these things versus these things here. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So I know I'm going a little quick. So our kind of prescription for this is this right here. We believe most time should be spent on low intensity physical activity, and this is what we call physical activity with regard to like a very, very slow walk, walking the dogs, going out doing activity of a very, very low intensity, not a 5K run, not a 10K run. That would fit into this one, middle intensity steady state training. And then the rest of your time should be spent in the strength and or HIIT training, so sprint training or strength training inside the gym. These are the two areas in which you should be living in. This one right here, this red zone, should be something that we're actually going to be pushing away from. We're not going to want to spend a lot of time in that zone unless you are only an endurance athlete. You got to spend some time there. Okay. Big picture recommendations. I think I just said all this stuff here, and I'm pretty much out of time, so I'll leave you with that quote.